Hey everyone, thanks for attending this month's town hall. I actually had to go back and make this title slide again due to technical difficulties, which also included not the best audio quality. So we will be jumping right into a question asked about SPRS scoring and what that view looks like in the compliance tab of the platform. So we'll work on getting the quality better for future town halls. And as always, thank you for subscribing. So let's get to it.
Yeah, and then if you want to have it in a report, that's an export, it's just going to show up under the additional options, and it's going to be on by default. And this is, of course, only for the NIST doc export. You can toggle it if you wish to remove it. So yeah, we really just want to cover anyone who has any questions today, um, and go into some use cases and some different things. Other than that, I'll just kind of dot around and show some areas that we have added that some people might not have seen. So one thing I wanted to highlight, just because I've had a chance to uh, add some stuff to the demo network. In the new hosts area, one of the things that we're really happy about is the new flyout for hosts, the Insight flyout. So when you click on the host now in the inventory area, or anywhere, if it's in agents or anywhere where that host is listed, you get this flyout. And when you have, of course, the connected network or firewall device that that
Hey,
host is communicating with.
Pat, can I pause you just for 1 second? Can you turn your microphone volume up a little bit, please?
Um, sure. Um, Hopefully that is better. Oh, let me also make sure it's using the right mic.
Yeah, I think your AC is coming through a little bit, but definitely can hear you a lot better.
Okay. Um, okay. Awesome. Yeah, so when you have that connected up, you'll be able to see all traffic that is sourced or going to the host. So you'll be able to view that here. And also, you're going to be able to view the traffic logs, much like you would be viewing on the dashboard associated, again, with that firewall. So, for example, this is leveraging pfSense. So if we go to the pfSense firewall, we're going to see a lot of nice traffic for that. And I'll just open that up um, in a new tab. But for this individual host and this IP, so of course any source addresses that are associated with this host, so it's going to automatically pick that up from the host. If you wanted to edit the host and add manually any additional interfaces, you can do that as well. With the firewall, we're going to be able to see, as with every firewall, all traffic for all hosts. And now with this new Insight flyout, we're going to be able to see the specific traffic as well as associated vulnerabilities if there are any for that host. On the vulnerability scanner as well, we're going to be able to see for across the entirety of the environment, and then again on the flyout just for this particular host. We can also see, of course, metrics information like we were able to see before, hardware and software information for this particular host, and then of course at the top here we have the hardware and software for every host that has been added into this area. So hardware and software is just going to be for any hosts that have agents installed, the NeQter Agent Manager installed. But if we go to the inventory area, if there's something that doesn't have an agent, say it's a switch or anything, a firewall or anything that we choose to add here, we'll be able to track that and add tags and filter down, and we will be able to see. So this is the pfSense router that was added, so we will be able to see traffic logs, any associated vulnerabilities, of course, as well, and then what it can glean from hardware and any associated events. And of course, we can add additional things here. So this will get added when we add a new input in the settings area. So if you add your firewall, it will get added as a user added syslog input and listed out in your inventory here. So anything that you add from the syslog standpoint, again, will get listed out here. And just to reemphasize again, this new unknown hosts area. So this is pulling information from the vulnerability scanner. So every time you run a vulnerability scan, if there is a host that has been identified that has not been reconciled into your inventory, it's going to get listed out here. And what you're going to be able to do is you can do a few things. You can expand this out so that it will run an Nmap scan of that asset. So we can see that this has an open port. We can see that it's a Linux-based system. We can also grab the MAC and the IP information for this device. It wasn't able to pull the name. It might not have a name. But the nice thing here as well is when there are open ports, we're going to be able to click on that, and it's going to take us to that IP and to that port. So if it's a web page or a management console or a login or something of that sort, it will open it up and it will have us land on that splash page. But with this one, with just 888, it's not going to pull anything up here because it's not serving anything up. But we are able to see the protocol, the transport, so it's TCP and port 8888. If we recognize this asset, we can, so it's going to get default tagged with phone scan discovered, but we can reconcile this and add this into our inventory so it's no longer unknown. So we can give it a name, give it a description, give it an asset tag, a location, and any associated tags. So we have some in here by default. So if you wanted to mark it as a CUI asset, if we wanted to give it a label, so this is Linux, if it was a mail server, if it's legacy, if it's any number of these, if it's a user asset, but of course any custom tag that you wanted to add, you're able to do that as well. So if there was a certain user group that you wanted to associate this with or tag, you could add that. And then that tag can be dynamically selected for any other asset. It's just going to get added to this list here. It's going to automatically add the interface. And when we, I'm just going to name this Linux host for now, test network. So when we add this, and so we'll save these settings. But we're also going to be able to see the insight information as well. So traffic logs of that host, any hardware associated information, any associated vulnerabilities for this asset. So just wanted to kind of rehash that again because I have some new data in here. I might be able to. I thought I would be able to better show that information. So any questions about the past few updates? I know that the tool itself has changed a bit. Hosts is really one of the central areas of the tool now. Of course, there's still dashboards, there's still events, there's still the vulnerability scanner, but a lot of stuff has been consolidated up in this hosts area. Any questions from anyone watching to get a little bit more specific, touch upon a use case, get into an area? I haven't seen anything so far. One additional thing I wanted to show is, which I did highlight last time, but just the knowledge base is up on the top right, second icon in, has its own flyout. So rather than you opening up a separate tab and accessing docs.neqterlabs.com, it's all right here in this flyout. And anytime that you click on something and you open it up, and we close this again, and we go to a different page, it's going to remember where you were. One thing that we so I do see that question. The IP address changes for an unknown host that you add will still be seen and manually added. Yes, so essentially that host will remain in here, and if the IP changes, let's see, the IP changes for an unknown host that you added. So once it's communicating and once it has that host, if the IP changes, it will add that IP address as basically another source interface. So once it's added to the inventory, it will track it. If you remove it from the inventory and its IP changes, then it's going to treat that as a new asset. No, so a lot of these that I have in here manual, I actually have to do some cleanup. These were added, actually, these were carried over from the network monitor, which, if you remember, was its own tab. Network monitor is now located under the host area. So if you wanted to add a new monitor, it's going to add it to a particular host. So if you wanted to track a service on a server, you would have that server in here, and then you would go to that host and you would add that. So we'll go to one of the agents. So we'll just go to this one here. So if I click on this, I can edit this, and under service monitoring, I can add a monitor. So before, where you had to manually type everything in, even if it was something that you had inventoried. So if you had your AD server and you had an agent on it, you had to go before, and you had to go and add that, type in 192.168.1. whatever to the network monitor, and then add the port. Now everything's getting inventoried, so now you can just go to the inventoried asset and add a monitor. You can still add a monitor for something that isn't tied to an asset. So you could put, Google.com. It would just be attributed as a host. So that's where that comes in. And I just want to make sure I answered the second part of that question. Yeah, so if ADs is pushing out all those agents, the agent manager, they're all going to phone home, they will get listed as an agent. I just have a bunch of manual just because I had previously a lot of network monitors, and those got carried into the inventory system, so I just need to clean that out. But for, I imagine, your environment, it's going to say agent across the board, and then manual is going to fall under, again, those syslog inputs. So if you add, your firewalls or switches, those will get listed in here as manual. Um,
Pat, while you're in
Mhm.
this section, we also have a question asking what the unique identifier is that will determine what is the same device in this section.
So it really comes down to host name. So it's a combination of host name and the address. I can check on that just to make sure. Don't want to have misinformation. So let me actually message one of our devs. So while we wait for that, so how to get the agent installer to correctly install and be used when the endpoint is connected through a VPN that is connected by the user. So typically with our, through group policy, if that asset is connected to your domain, it's going to have that agent get installed. And of course, the agent can only communicate, through that client-side VPN directly to the NeQter, unless there was some other way to route or some way that you've set up to have it reach wherever your NeQter is installed. So upon connection through the VPN, because it's authenticating through your domain, it's going to get that agent installed and should be a straightforward deploy. If you have questions on that, please feel free to reach out to our support team.
And then if you want to jump into a new section, we also have a question from Mark. He'd like to know if we have any tips on what the best way to validate his upgraded SSP would be. An example going from the old NIST framework into the new CMMC framework.
So I'm at so where we had with that the compliance side of things. It copies everything over. It has unfortunately with the way that we had NIST before, because we still had it tethered to the 53 controls that they originated from. There was a lot of many to many or many to one or one to many mappings. So anywhere that the mapping correlated forward to the new CMMC entry, we copied from the old area, and it's going to reference the previous control that it was copied from, and it's going to break that up across each one. And what we did was we had it where everything says needs review. So in terms of order of process, I don't really have what's the easiest way to validate because it's all the right information that got copied forward, but some of it might be out of context to the control that was copied from, or it might be duplicated. So unfortunately, you are going to have to go through each one and make sure that those entries that were copied from the past are relevant to the new mapping that it was copied to, and you'll have to go and you'll have to clear each one that says needs review. So unfortunately, you will have to go through all 320 assessment objectives. But we just wanted to make it where you wouldn't have to, copy and paste or just have it where everything's copied, and then you can go through eliminating what's not relevant. And let's see here. So let's see what's and I will get back to that unique identifier question. Yeah. So so Lance. Yeah. Well, that's all you had. Nick, you reached out with support. Yeah, we'll have to. That might be something along the lines of making sure that the new agents are deployed. It sounds like if some of the older agents are deployed, those might be listed as manual. Um, and so I got one part of the question answered on the UUID. So for the unique identifier for agents for hosts with agents, when the agent's installed, it creates a unique identifier. And when the host first talks to NeQter, it creates a host definition, and the agent ID is assigned to that host's newly created UUID. And then from then on, the inventory contains the agent and its doc, and the front end loads all the host definitions. When it needs the inventory, it uses the agent unique identifier to grab the newest inventory. But I want to just make sure I'm clear on the unique identification for manually added assets, or the unknown hosts that are added. And yeah, so you can so just to answer your question, Mark, so you can compare your previous to the new, but I just want to make sure I understand correctly that you did use the convert mechanism to convert the old to the new, but you can essentially pull up each one in a new tab, so you don't have to log in to two different sessions. You can just open up each one in a new tab. This for your NeQter. If you like, Mark, we could have a short call to discuss, just to make crystal clear what your question is. Yeah, so everything's going to say need review until you click into each one and mark it as cleared. So you'll do so by clicking into each one. And right now for you it says needs review, but you'll just be setting each of them to clear. We did that as a blanket just because we wanted to make sure, again, because there was the many to many or many to one or one to many mappings. It was kind of a little convoluted, but we got it to work. We just want to make sure that the updated SSP is an accurate reflection of what you need it to be. So we marked everything as review, so you go in and make sure that your description of implementation is accurate.
All right,
so,
Pat, got another question for you. Someone says they have the document called the CMMC Compliance Guide, which uses the phrase directly in the dashboard, or pin it, and he would like to know what pin it means. Also, thank you for bringing up the CMMC Compliance Guide, John. That's a great tool. If anybody does not have that, feel free to reach out to Patrick or myself, and we will send it right over.
Yeah, so I do have that as a PDF, and we do have a new updated version. Right now, however, we are actually working through the process of having it be located as a menu item and directly accessible through the doc site, through this Flyout. So right now, we do have it in PDF form, but all these entries will get added to the doc site for your reference. Now, specifically, directly in the dashboard or pin it, So you can pin items in the dashboard. So we'll go just to this PF Sense here. So what you can do is, for example, if you made a filter, it's going to get listed up on top here. And when we pin something, we click on the filter as it shows up underneath the search bar, and we can click pin across all apps. So what that will allow us to do is that will allow us to take this query and go to other dashboards or go to the Discover area if we wanted to establish a query or a sequence of filters and then pin them. So of course there are certain values that are going to be unique to a particular vendor. So you may pin a filter of something and go to a different dashboard, and it comes up with 0 results, just because that's a unique event or a unique filter for that particular vendor. But if it was an IP address, or if it was a username, or maybe a desktop identifier or asset identifier, then it possibly could show up on other dashboards. When you pin something, of course, so on the dashboard we have this, we have this pinned. I can add this filter here, and I can also pin this as well. And if I go to the Discover area and I open up the index for this, so as you can see, these two are unique, and it doesn't show up on this default health that I went into on the index. But if I go into pfSense, then of course we are on the pfSense dashboard. I'm in the pfSense index. It's going to filter down, and we can see everything highlighted here. So that is what pin it means. And of course you can then unpin. You can also, when you have a filter up here, you can edit the filter, change the operator. You can do multiple different things even after you've applied filter. You can also make a negative query so that you can exclude those results. So Bill, do you have a live person monitoring as part of your suite of services? NeQter Labs currently does not offer that service. We are in the process of piloting with a trusted partner to provide a Security Operations Center, or SOC, as a service, as a complement to our services. Yeah, so just to touch back upon the compliance guide, because obviously right now we're sending it out individually. We might have a newer version, you might have an older version, so everything is going to get much more tightened up when we have it listed out here on our doc site. So then you'll have the latest and greatest. And this is of course live. This is just feeding in from the website, so anytime we add something, it's going to get listed out here.
Pat, you just got a new question from Rob. What is the best way to search for indicators of compromise and set up alerts for those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so indicators of compromise can, of course, vary. So we do have some defaults in the alerting area located under events. So certain ones that we do have relate a lot to Windows and Active Directory. We of course have different ones for different firewalls and networking vendors, and then of course we do have specific alerts for the NeQter Labs system itself, so that you can know about potential failed login attempts or access or changes or anything like that on the NeQter itself. So the best way to go and set up the alerts is by going into events, adding a new alert, and going to the different vendors that we have in here that you also have, and turning on these different alerts as you see fit. So we do have different information about creating accounts or deleting accounts, failed login attempts, failed login attempts for admin-related users. For Windows specifically, we do have a few related around if there's a change to your domain policy, if there is excessive file deletion. And if you wanted to change any of these alerts, you can in a way where you can take the query and you can edit it, and then you can save it as a new query. You can, of course, make any queries that you like we just showed it, pinning stuff. Those can be saved and turned into a saved search, and then loaded up as a custom alert profile. Alerts is one of those things that we are going to be. It's kind of last on the chopping block, just because we've had so much that we're doing, and we are going to be actually updating to version 3 of the platform in early 2023. But one of the things that we are going to be doing is reworking alerts to add some more of those different profiles and indicators of compromise. So we do have a good subset now, but we are going to be expanding that in future. Just want to make sure we didn't miss any questions from before, Nick.
Yeah, any questions that you've been answering, I've been cleaning out of the question queue for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just looking through. Yeah, so any specific questions on the new hosts feature, inventory, how to add things, how to change things, how to view vulnerabilities, anything like that? Just want to make sure that stuff gets covered. So I know it's new. And yeah, so I just confirmed with the unique identifier. So if it is a manually added host or if it's detected in the unknown, then the host definition is in place of the agent ID. So with the agent ID, there's of course for the agents, and it gets that unique identifier, and then the host identifier or the host name is used. So even if there is an IP change, it basically tags that host, and we'll reach out and we'll update and we'll change that, and we'll add that new IP to that host. And also, of course, this is a review of where we are now. But if there's any recommendations of things that people want to see, or any feedback or requests for features, this is also the time and place to do it. Yes. So by default, to answer your question, David, so DNS name is what you asked about the host name definition. So when the vulnerability scanner scans and identifies a quote-unquote unknown host, it will pull the DNS name if it can, and of course if the network is set up appropriately for NeQter to be able to pull that DNS name. If If it is unable to pull the DNS name, then the host identifier will be what you punch in for the the custom host name. And one of the things, so our next update, which we are still developing a timeline on, but will be in the next couple months or so, if not sooner, is a 2.14.3. One of the things that we are adding to that, because we have gotten requested on, is an updated method and a more advanced method for inventory export. So that should be something that we're able to review on the next webinar. So that's going to be a light lift that we're going to add in the coming weeks, and so we should be able to cover that for next month's monthly webinar. And yeah. And of course, as always, NeQter Labs is tracking any and all changes to CMMC. So we're a great source to reach out and ask about that side of things. Really nothing coming out for the rest of this year that we see in a major way for CMMC. The real news is definitely going to be next year, next spring, when they look to announce the interim DFARS rule. One of the things I have Rich is messaging me. He's on the webinar. So we are actually, or I rather, am actually going to be away the first week of next month. I'm going to Navy Gold Coast, so we will probably have to move the webinar to be on Tuesday the 13th rather than Tuesday the 6th. So we got a new question from John. With the older version, unknown hosts on your network would be discovered when you're connected via VPN. So you should unknown hosts is directly related to what you are scanning with your vulnerability scanner. So might be a networking thing to look into if those are not showing up anymore. That can be something that I would recommend opening up a ticket for support to talk through. But if we can see it and we can scan it, it's going to be listed out in here. So that might be just a review of your network interface settings or the settings of the vulnerability scan, because that is what is populating, of course, the vulnerabilities area here, but then, of course, also the unknown hosts. Another question from Lance. For your remote sites, we have had to create separate scopes since they were not part of a /24 environment at corporate. But if there's a better way, then that would be cool. So when you're talking about separate scopes, are you referring to establishing different scans for the vulnerability scanner? Because I believe that we have a limitation currently with the vulnerability scanner where each scan profile can only support up to a /24. But we are completely redressing and updating and improving the vulnerability scanner for our version 3, which is slated for spring of 2023, and that will no longer be a limitation. So rather than having multiple different vulnerability scans based upon that limitation, it should be consolidated and fixed for that update. Yep. Yeah, so different scopes need to be applied with the vulnerability scanner. However, all of those assets and all of those scopes will get listed out in the inventory without having those barriers in between. Everything will be listed out here like normal, because we have a very high threshold for the number of hosts that we're able to maintain and store in this inventory area. So I think that this webinar lasted longer than the last one, even though that was more structured and we went through more stuff, just reviewing the different areas, just because we had so many great questions. But of course, if there's any more questions or any last questions that anyone would like to cover, please ask them now. Otherwise, we'll look to wrap this up in the next couple minutes or so. Yeah, so to answer your question, Rob, so can we go over setting up the vuln scan to find unknown hosts? So you can absolutely set up a new scan to just have a discovery scan, just if you want to have that run daily. So say you have your regular scan run monthly. You actually don't need to set up any scans to have the unknown hosts feature work. So if you have a weekly or recurring monthly scan, it's going to automatically add those unknown hosts based upon every time you run your scan. It's going to populate that automatically. So you actually don't need to do anything in order for that to work. It's just going to natively work with the settings that you already have. Now, if you have a monthly scan and you would want to know, more about, hey, you know what, I need to, I want to know more if there's unknown hosts. I want to look at that every day. I want to know if there's an unknown host that gets added. You can, set up a new task and have that run daily. Just so that you're capturing any unknown hosts. And I would just, rather than the scan config be full and fast, which is what we typically recommend, just because it's the best balance of depth and speed to find vulnerabilities. If you don't want to look for vulnerabilities, if you just want to discover, I would use the discovery scan config. And then, of course, you need to set your targets. So whatever your network is, save this as a new, target profile. Hit save. So this one already exists. So I'll just, yeah. So, it's because this has an unnamed target. Yep. So you can just set that up, and again, set that up for daily, and hit save, and then that scan will run every day, and will populate your unknown hosts for you. But again, it's just leveraging information already from your vulnerability scanner. So if you have standard scans that run on a routine, it's going to populate in there, no problem. Yeah, we wanted to keep it same thing for in the host area for vulnerabilities. It's just going to be pulling vulnerability. You don't need to change or alter anything that you already are doing. It's just reading and feeding in information from that area. This new hosts area we were really excited about adding because it's just consolidating multiple areas of the tool into one, with the vulnerabilities, the traffic, the events, any and also configuration as well as inventory. It's all getting pulled in here in a nice way for us to view. So hopefully that answers your question there. Any remaining questions before we look to wrap this up?
All right, guys. It looks like we've answered all the questions for today's webinar. As Pat mentioned earlier in the webinar, we are going to be having another minor update release with some new features. So we'll have some new stuff to show you guys next month after Pat gets back from Navy Gold Coast. If anyone else is going out there, keep an eye out for him. He's always a fun time. And we will talk to you guys in about a month. Thanks for coming out today. We look forward to seeing you guys. David, if you want, I can give you a call after the webinar if you don't want to ask your question right now. But you can feel free to fire away if we've got time for it. We'll definitely address it for you.
So one of the things, just to wrap up with the last question. So we do have inventory change notifications in the events area. So we do have those as like a low level, but those are going to get listed out here anytime anything changes. If an IP changes, if something gets plugged in or removed, if a new software is added or removed. So it's just it's just recording every time something changes as perceived in the hardware or software area, and will get chalked up on here on the inventory. So I had this purple one here, indicating an IP change for my asset. So it will indicate an inventory report every 10 minutes. Of course, if it's communicating with that asset. But I think what you're mentioning, David, is the fact that there's constant inventory change, and it's kind of flooding your ability to see what is happening on this timeline. I imagine is what you're referencing. So if you could maybe open up a support ticket and share a couple screen grabs, and just so we can look into if it's intentional, if it actually shouldn't be happening, or if there's a way for us to maybe add a filter to filter out those events if you see them to be unnecessary. So please open up a support ticket and include some information, and we can investigate that for you. So you can open up, you don't have to open, there's a few different ways that you can open up a ticket with us. You can, of course, access and hit submit a ticket. What the submit a ticket is actually doing is opening up a form on our docs.NeQterLabs.com website. So you can navigate to docs.NeQterLabs.com and click submit ticket, or if you email support@NeQterLabs.com direct, it will automatically generate and open up a ticket for you. So we'll look to coordinate and hopefully get to the bottom of that for you.
Yeah. All right. I think that just about wraps things up for us. If anybody has any questions that we weren't able to address in today's webinar, always feel free to reach out to Patrick or myself. We're always happy to answer the phone or very quick to reply to an email, answer any questions you guys ever have. And we will look forward to seeing you guys all next month. Thanks for coming out again. And if there's anything you guys want to see out of these monthly webinars that you're not seeing right now, please let us know so that we can, make this as useful a resource for you guys as possible.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll talk again next month.